Commander Zexalar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display with great satisfaction. 300 warships from different alien species formed the largest battle fleet ever seen in this part of the galaxy. The Vorthans led the formation with their beautiful crystal ships that sparkled like diamonds in space. Their plasma weapons could melt through the strongest metals known to the galaxy. Behind them came the Kreeth swarm ships that looked like giant insects with their bio-armor that could heal itself during battle. At the back of the formation were the massive stone ships of the Thakari people whose railgun weapons could punch holes through small moons. For many months, the three species had been getting reports about a new race called humans who were expanding fast through the Outer Rim territories. The scout ships said these humans used very old technology compared to the great civilizations of the galactic core. Their ships were made of simple metal instead of energy shields, and they used chemical rockets instead of gravity drives. Most shocking of all, they still used kinetic weapons that fired physical projectiles instead of the advanced plasma cannons that every civilized species had been using for thousands of years. The alien coalition leaders had decided that humanity needed to be stopped before they became a real threat to the established order. It would be a simple show of force to destroy their primitive fleet and then occupy their worlds. The humans would become a client species, serving their betters like so many other primitive races had done before them. The three admirals commanding. The fleet expected this to be over in less than an hour. Zexalar clicked his mandibles in amusement as his communications officer reported a single contact approaching their position. The ship matched the basic design of human vessels from their intelligence files. It was small and crude-looking with visible weapon ports and rotating sections that primitive species used to create artificial gravity. The alien commander could hardly believe what he was seeing on his display. One ship against 300 was either the act of a complete fool or someone so desperate they had lost all sense of reality. Either way, it would make for good entertainment before the real work of conquest began. Zexalar ordered his weapons officer to prepare a surrender demand and transmit it to the approaching human vessel. On the tactical screen, the lone human ship appeared as nothing more than a tiny dot against the massive formation of alien warships. The smallest Vorthan cruiser was 3 times larger than the human vessel, and the Thakari dreadnoughts were so big they could carry the human ship in their cargo bays. The aliens began placing bets on how quickly the humans would surrender once they realized the hopelessness of their situation. Unknown to the aliens, the human vessel USS Defiance was commanded by Captain Jake Morrison, who stood calmly on his bridge studying the enemy formation. His experienced face showed no concern as he watched hundreds of hostile contacts fill his tactical display. Morrison had been fighting in space for over 20 years and had seen many enemy fleets before, but none this large. Still, his expression remained as calm as if he were reviewing a routine patrol report. Lieutenant Amy Carter at the sensor station reported that she was reading approximately 300 vessels in a standard Imperial attack formation. The mix included all the major alien ship classes that human intelligence had been tracking for months. Most were Vorthan crystal ships with their distinctive energy signatures, but there were also significant numbers of Kreeth bioships and Thakari heavy battleships. It was exactly the kind of force that the aliens would send to crush what they thought was a primitive upstart species. Communications officer Lisa Brooks reported that the aliens were transmitting what appeared to be a standard surrender demand in several different languages. The message was typical alien arrogance, demanding immediate submission and threatening total destruction if the humans did not comply within the next few minutes. Morrison listened to the translation with the same calm expression he had worn since the enemy fleet first appeared on their sensors. Morrison smiled grimly as he considered his response. The aliens were about to learn a very hard lesson about making assumptions. They thought they knew everything about human technology and capabilities based on carefully planted false intelligence reports. They believed humans were still using primitive chemical rockets and metal armor when the truth was very different. The deception had taken years to establish, but it was about to pay off in ways the aliens could never imagine. The captain gave orders to maintain position at maximum weapons range, while his crew prepared for what was coming next. Every human on the bridge knew they were about to witness something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The age of alien dominance was about to end, and they had front-row seats to watch it happen. Admiral Kethmar of the Thakari Heavy Fleet watched the human ship with growing irritation as it held position at the edge of their weapons range. 10 minutes had passed since they transmitted their surrender demand, and the primitive vessel was, still ignoring all communications. The Admiral's stone-like features showed his displeasure as he waited for some kind of response from the humans. His species valued direct action and hated wasting time on pointless delays. The Thakari science officer completed his analysis of the human vessel and reported his findings to the Admiral. The ship massed approximately 800,000 tons, which was actually quite large for what their intelligence said was a primitive species. However, it was still tiny compared to the massive Thakari dreadnoughts that weighed in at over 50 million tons each. The hull construction appeared to be simple metal plates welded together with no visible shield generators or advanced defensive systems. The weapons appeared to be kinetic-based projectile systems mounted in primitive turrets that had to physically rotate to target enemies. Maximum observed velocity suggested they were using chemical rocket propulsion, which had been abandoned by civilized species over 10,000 years ago. It was like seeing a wooden sailing ship trying to fight against modern battleships. The science officer concluded that this single human vessel posed absolutely no threat to even the smallest ship in their fleet. Kethmar's features twisted into what passed for a smile among his rock-like people. 800,000 tons against their combined fleet mass of over 2 billion tons was not even a fair fight. The human ship was probably here to negotiate or buy time for their main fleet to escape to safer systems. Either way, the demonstration of superior firepower would be brief and educational for these upstart primitives. Aboard the Vorthan flagship, Commander Zexlar was reaching the same conclusion about human intentions. His crystalline body pulsed with impatient energy as he waited for some kind of response to their demands. Perhaps the humans were trying to stall while their government prepared a formal surrender. Many primitive species had tried similar tactics when faced with the overwhelming might of a galactic coalition fleet. The communications officer announced that the human vessel was finally transmitting a response. Zexlar ordered the message to be put on the main display so all his bridge crew could witness human desperation. The screen flickered and showed the interior of what was clearly a military bridge with uniformed officers at various stations. The human speaking appeared to be their captain based on his position and the way the other crew members deferred to him. Captain Morrison stood straight and spoke in a clear professional voice that showed no sign of fear or uncertainty. He identified himself as Jake Morrison of the Terran Defense Force vessel USS Defiance and stated that the alien fleet had entered territory claimed by humanity. He told them they had made hostile gestures toward human ships and had one opportunity: to withdraw immediately and return to their own space. Morrison concluded by saying this was their only warning before ending the transmission. The alien bridge crews across the entire fleet burst into various forms of laughter. The clicking, chittering, and rumbling sounds filled command centers as experienced military officers tried to process what they had just witnessed. One primitive ship had just warned 300 advanced warships to leave or face the consequences. The sheer audacity was beyond anything they had encountered in their long careers of conquest and expansion. Zexalar's crystalline form practically glowed with amusement as he shared the joke with his fellow commanders. One ship warning 300 was either the height of primitive ignorance or a sign that humans had completely lost touch with reality. Either way, it would make the coming demonstration even more satisfying. The alien crews began preparing their weapons while discussing how best to disable the human ship without destroying it completely. Admiral Kethmar activated the fleet-wide communications channel and ordered all ships to arm weapons and prepare for demonstration firing. He wanted them to target the human vessel's propulsion systems so the crew would survive to witness the destruction of their home worlds. The humans needed to learn their place in the galactic order, and watching their fleet die would be an excellent first lesson. Across the massive alien armada, hundreds of weapon systems came online in preparation for battle. Plasma cannons that could vaporize asteroids began charging their energy cells. Bioacid projectors that dissolved anything they touched prepared to fire their deadly loads. Massive railguns that had shattered planets swiveled toward the lone human ship like predators, focusing on helpless prey. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came from the Kreeth sensor drones scattered throughout the star system. These bioorganic constructs had been specifically bred for detection work over thousands of generations until their senses could detect the smallest changes in space. They began transmitting frantic chemical alarm signals that their handlers had never seen in decades of military service. The patterns were so unusual that many Kreeth officers thought their drones were malfunctioning. Commander Grixth, who led the Kreeth contingent, felt his chitin plates vibrating with unease as the alarm chemicals reached his ship. His biotech specialist was connected to the swarm network through neural implants that allowed direct communication with the sensor drones. The specialist suddenly went rigid as data flooded through the biological links faster than any Kreeth mind could process. Something was happening in the space around them, but the drones could not identify exactly what it was. The specialist managed to report that the drones were detecting massive spatial distortions throughout the system before the data stream became too intense to translate. The pattern suggested that space itself was being bent and twisted by forces beyond their understanding. Whatever was causing the distortions was happening on a scale that dwarfed anything in their experience of galactic warfare. The space around the alien armada began to change in ways that violated everything they knew about physics. What appeared to be empty vacuum started to shimmer and distort like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Massive shapes began materializing from apparent nothingness as sophisticated cloaking systems disengaged simultaneously across hundreds of cubic kilometers. The aliens watched in growing horror as their sensors registered contacts that had not been there seconds before. In the span of 30 seconds, the alien fleet found itself completely surrounded by human warships that had been hiding in plain sight. The vessels that appeared were unlike anything in the extensive alien databases. Where the Defiance had looked primitive and crude, these new ships were clearly built for one purpose only. Their sleek, angular hulls were optimized for combat with weapon ports that could engage targets in any direction. The human ships that materialized around the alien fleet were not the 800,000-ton primitives they expected. These monsters massed between 2 and 15 million tons each, making them larger than most alien battleships. Their hulls were not the crude metal construction the intelligence reports described, but something far more advanced. The dark, non-reflective material seemed to absorb sensor pings rather than reflecting them back. Captain Morrison watched his tactical display update as his fleet decloaked around the alien formation. 12 heavy battleships, 36 cruisers, and over 100 destroyers and frigates had been lying in wait, using the most advanced stealth technology humanity had ever developed. The aliens had walked directly into a carefully prepared trap without having any idea they were being watched. Morrison ordered a fleet status report and received confirmation that all vessels were ready for combat operations. Admiral Stevens, aboard the massive battleship USS Vengeance, requested permission to begin the engagement that they had been planning for months. Everything was proceeding exactly according to the battle plan that had been developed by the best military minds on Earth. Morrison gave permission to execute Thunderstrike Protocol and watched as his fleet prepared to demonstrate why underestimating humanity was about to become a fatal mistake. The aliens were still trying to process what had happened when the human ships opened fire with weapons that would redefine galactic warfare forever. The age of alien dominance was about to end in the next few minutes. The alien fleet was still trying to process the appearance of over 100 human warships when the devastating attack began. What emerged from the human weapons was not the primitive kinetic projectiles their intelligence reports had described. Instead, streams of coherent energy lanced out from the human vessels, cutting through alien hull plating as easily as hot knives through butter. The beams were not plasma like the Vorthons used, but something else entirely that the aliens had never encountered before. Focused particle beams emerged from the human ships with surgical precision. Each shot was carefully calculated for maximum effect rather than the wasteful spray-and-pray tactics most species used in space combat. The humans fired with the mechanical efficiency of machines rather than the emotional responses typical of organic beings. Every beam hit exactly where the human gunners intended, causing catastrophic damage to critical systems. The first volley from the human fleet destroyed 47 alien vessels in less than 10 seconds. Ships that had served in dozens of battles across the galaxy simply ceased to exist as human weapons found their weak points with impossible accuracy. The aliens watched in horror as vessels that had seemed invincible moments before were reduced to expanding clouds of debris and escaping atmosphere. Admiral Kethmar watched 3 of his heavy dreadnoughts vaporized by weapons that should not have been possible for such a primitive species. These massive ships had been the pride of the Thakari fleet, with armor thick enough to withstand direct hits from asteroids. They had survived battles against entire enemy fleets without taking serious damage. Now they were gone, as if they had never existed at all. The Thakari admiral roared orders across the communications channel for all ships to return fire with everything they had. The alien fleet responded with the fury of hundreds of advanced weapon systems firing simultaneously. Plasma bolts that could melt through mountains streaked across space toward the human ships. Bioacid streams that dissolved any known material followed close behind. Massive railgun slugs that had shattered moons accelerated toward their targets at incredible velocities. The display screens throughout the alien fleet lit up with the combined firepower of 3 different species unleashing their most destructive weapons. It was enough concentrated force to destroy entire planets, yet the human ships continued their advance without even slowing down. Whatever material composed their hulls seemed to absorb or deflect the alien weapons with casual ease that defied all known science. Plasma bolts that should have melted through meters of the strongest armor barely left scorch marks on the dark human hull plating. The energy simply seemed to disappear into the strange material without causing any visible damage. Railgun projectiles that had demolished fortified positions bounced off the human ships like pebbles thrown at mountains. Even the feared Kreeth bioacid that could eat through any known substance had no effect whatsoever. Commander Zexalar witnessed his flagship's main plasma cannon discharge directly into the side of a human cruiser with results that shattered his understanding of physics. This weapon was capable of cracking continents and had never failed to destroy any target it had been fired at. The massive beams splashed harmlessly across the dark hull, leaving no visible damage whatsoever. It was as if the human ship had simply absorbed the energy and converted it to something else. The Vorton commander stared at his weapon displays in disbelief as they showed successful hits with 0 damage inflicted. His crystalline body flickered through colors that indicated confusion and growing fear as he realized their most powerful weapons were completely useless. The humans were not just more advanced than expected. They possessed technology so far beyond anything the aliens understood that resistance was pointless. The human fleet moved through the alien formation like predators among helpless prey. Their ships demonstrated maneuverability that should have been impossible for vessels of their size. They dodged incoming fire with grace that defied physics, while their own weapons continued to find targets with mechanical precision. Each human Ships seemed to know exactly where every alien vessel would be before they moved. The aliens found themselves outmatched in every category that mattered in space combat. Speed, maneuverability, firepower, and defense all favored the humans by margins so large they might as well have been fighting with different laws of physics. What had begun as a simple demonstration of superior firepower had become a massacre that would be remembered across the galaxy for generations. The battle that would be remembered as the massacre at Kepler Station lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds from the first shot to the final explosion. The human fleet moved through the alien formation with the systematic efficiency of a harvesting machine. They did not simply destroy ships, but methodically dismantled the entire alien fleet with surgical precision that left nothing to chance. The Kreeth swarm ships had been bred for speed and maneuverability over millions of years of evolution. Their bioarmor had adapted to resist every form of natural weapon that existed in their home galaxy. These advantages that had made them feared across dozens of star systems proved completely useless against human particle beams that cut through their organic hulls like they were made of soft tissue. Commander Grixth watched his entire swarm die around him as ships that had served the Hive for centuries were reduced to expanding clouds of organic debris. The bio-armor that had evolved to heal battle damage could not regenerate fast enough to counter weapons that destroyed entire sections of hull with each hit. His final transmission before his own vessel was destroyed was a chemical scream of disbelief that would haunt surviving Kreeth for generations. The Thakari heavy ships had been built like mobile fortresses with armor designed to withstand the combined firepower of entire enemy fleets. These massive vessels had served as the backbone of Thakari expansion for over 1,000 years. Their legendary durability had become the stuff of military legend as they absorbed punishment that would have destroyed lesser ships and kept fighting. Admiral Kethmar's flagship, the Iron Mountain, had been the most heavily armored vessel in known space. This monster had withstood direct bombardment from planetary defense systems without taking critical damage. It had survived battles where entire enemy fleets had concentrated their fire on its massive bulk. Now, human weapons carved through its legendary armor like it was made of soft clay rather than the hardest materials known to science. The Iron Mountain's bridge became a scene of chaos as human beams found critical systems with impossible accuracy. Explosions rocked the massive vessel as power conduits overloaded and life support systems failed. Kethmar's final words transmitted on an open channel as his bridge burned around him were simple, but would echo through Thakari military academies forever. All he said was how before the transmission cut off permanently, the Vorthan vessels with their advanced crystalline hulls and sophisticated energy manipulation systems lasted the longest against the human assault. Their technology was considered the most advanced in the known galaxy, and their ships had never been defeated in direct combat. They managed to survive almost 2 full minutes longer than their allies before succumbing to the relentless human attack. Commander Zexlar found himself alone on the bridge of his dying flagship, with all his crew dead from explosive decompression. Emergency power flickered as human weapons systematically destroyed every critical system on his once proud vessel. As human ships closed in for the final strike, he managed to send one last desperate message toward Vorthan's space, hoping someone would receive his warning. His transmission was brief, but carried a message that would change galactic politics forever. He told his people to beware the humans because they were not what they seemed. The intelligence reports had been wrong, and everything they thought they knew was false. The warning cut off as his flagship finally succumbed to the devastating human assault. Throughout the brief engagement, the USS Defiance had remained motionless at the edge of the battle zone. Captain Morrison and his crew watched their fleet work with the professional detachment of experienced military officers observing a training exercise. The systematic destruction of 300 alien warships was proceeding exactly according to the battle plan developed months earlier. Lieutenant Brooks reported that all hostile vessels had been neutralized, and Admiral Stevens confirmed 0 friendly casualties with minimal ammunition expenditure. The human fleet had destroyed the largest alien armada ever assembled while using less than 5% of their available firepower. The demonstration had been even more effective than their most optimistic projections. 6 days after the massacre, the emergency message finally reached Vorthan Prime, carried by an automated probe that had escaped the battle. The crystalline beings who ruled the Vorthan Empire received Commander Zexalar's final transmission in their great crystal city that had stood as a monument to 10,000 years of galactic dominance. The news struck the leadership like a physical blow that shattered their confidence in Vorthan's superiority. The Council of Resonance, composed of the oldest and wisest Vorthans, listened to the fragmentary battle data with growing alarm. Senior Counselor Thisara's crystalline form flickered through deep purple hues that indicated profound concern and disbelief. She ordered the tactical recordings to be played again so the Council could study exactly what had happened to their fleet. The holographic display showed the brief battle from the perspective of Zexalar's flagship. 300 ships representing some of the most advanced military technology in known space had been systematically destroyed in less than 5 minutes. The human fleet had appeared from nowhere using stealth technology that their best sensors could not detect. Their weapons had cut through the finest armor in the galaxy like it did not exist. Military analyst Koraval stepped forward to present his findings with his crystalline body, pulsing, nervous orange patterns. The humans had used technology that defied analysis and contradicted everything in their extensive databases. Their ships had demonstrated capabilities that should have been impossible, including cloaking systems that made them invisible to the most sophisticated sensors ever developed. The weapons used by the human fleet did not match any known energy signatures in the galactic databases. They were not plasma beams or particle cannons or any of the other weapon types that civilized species had been using for thousands of years. Whatever the humans had fired seemed to operate on entirely different physical principles that the Vorthan scientists could not begin to understand. Thisara demanded to know about their intelligence reports on human technology. According to their best information, humans were a primitive species using chemical rockets and kinetic weapons. Their ships were supposed to be crude metal constructions with no advanced defensive systems. The data they had been receiving for months painted humans as backwards primitives who posed no threat to established galactic powers. Koraval's colors shifted to confused yellow as he tried to reconcile the intelligence reports with the battle recordings. Either their information had been completely wrong from the beginning, or the humans had deliberately fed false data to the galactic intelligence networks. If the second option was true, then every assumption about this new species was not just wrong, but catastrophically dangerous. The implications of deliberate deception hung in the crystalline chamber like a death sentence. If the humans had been hiding their true capabilities while expanding through the rim territories, then their rapid conquest of 47 star systems took on an entirely different meaning. They were not lucky primitives stumbling into empty space, but a highly advanced species implementing a carefully planned expansion strategy. Thisara asked how many systems the humans now controlled and received confirmation of 47 confirmed conquests, with possibly more unreported. They had been expanding faster than any species in recorded galactic history, while maintaining the fiction that they were primitive newcomers. The scope of the deception suggested planning and coordination on a scale that few species could achieve. The ancient Vorthan counselor considered the terrible possibility that humanity represented a threat beyond their current understanding. In the tactical recordings, she had watched human ships move through their fleet like death itself, demonstrating capabilities that made the finest Vorthan technology look primitive by comparison. No wasted motion, no unnecessary destruction, just pure clinical efficiency that spoke of vast experience in space warfare. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of receiving the Vorthan transmission. Representatives from dozens of species gathered in the great assembly hall that had witnessed 10,000 years of galactic politics. The news from the Outer Rim had spread through diplomatic channels faster than anyone thought possible. An entire coalition fleet had been destroyed by a species most delegates had never heard of just weeks earlier. Ambassador Thisara of the Vorthan Empire stood before the assembled delegates with her crystalline form displaying the deep purple, hues of profound concern. She played the recorded battle data for representatives who watched in stunned silence as 300 warships were systematically destroyed in less than 5 minutes. The tactical display showed human vessels appearing from nowhere and demonstrating weapon technology beyond anything in the galactic databases. The Kreeth delegate's chitin plates clicked nervously as he translated the chemical scream that had been Commander Grix's final transmission. His entire swarm had been bred for combat over millions of years, yet they had lasted less than 2 minutes against human weapons. Bio-armor that had evolved to resist every natural weapon in existence had proven useless against technology that operated on completely different principles. Representative Kethmore of the surviving Thakari colonies spoke of ships that had withstood planetary bombardments being carved apart like soft stone. The legendary durability of Thakari engineering had become meaningless when faced with human particle beams that ignored conventional armor entirely. Admiral Kethmar's final question of how would echo through military academies across the galaxy. The delegate from the Altarian Federation pointed out that their intelligence networks had been tracking human expansion for months. All reports indicated that humanity was using primitive technology that posed no threat to established galactic powers. Chemical rockets, kinetic weapons, and metal hull construction were supposed to be the limits of human engineering capability. Ambassador. Thisara's form flared with angry white light as she responded to the intelligence assessment. Either every spy network in the galaxy had failed completely, or the humans had fed them false information with deliberate intent to deceive. The scope of such deception would require planning and coordination that few species could achieve. It suggested that humanity was far more sophisticated than anyone had imagined. The implications of deliberate technological deception sent waves of fear through the assembled delegates. If humans could hide their true capabilities so effectively, while expanding through 47 star systems, then what other surprises might they have in store? The rapid pace of their conquest took on sinister new meaning when viewed as a planned campaign rather than lucky primitive expansion. The elderly Zelkarian ambassador raised the question that every delegate was thinking, but none wanted to voice. If the destroyed fleet represented humanity holding back, then what did their full military capability look like? The humans had demonstrated weapons and defensive systems that made the finest galactic technology look primitive. They had moved through the coalition fleet like predators among helpless prey. The debate that followed would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. Some delegates argued for immediate military action to stop human expansion before they became an unstoppable force. Others pointed out that any species capable of destroying 300 warships in 5 minutes might not be impressed by additional, conventional forces. The galaxy suddenly seemed much smaller and more dangerous than it had that morning. Ambassador Thisara concluded her presentation with a recommendation that shocked the assembly into silence. The Vorthan Empire was officially proposing that humanity be offered immediate recognition as a major galactic power with full diplomatic status. They should be invited to join the Galactic Council and offered trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and whatever else they wanted to prevent further military confrontation. At the secure Terran Defense Force facility on Luna, Admiral Patricia Grant reviewed the after-action reports from what the history books would call the Battle of Kepler Station. The operation had exceeded all expectations with 0 human casualties and complete destruction of the alien coalition fleet. More importantly, their carefully maintained deception regarding human technological capabilities remained intact across most of the galaxy. Colonel Ryan Walsh entered the briefing room carrying a stack of communication intercepts that had been flooding in since news of the battle spread. 17 different alien governments had sent requests for immediate diplomatic talks within hours of learning about the human victory. The tone of these messages had shifted dramatically from the condescending superiority they had shown just days earlier. Admiral Grant smiled as she reviewed the diplomatic communications. The transformation from alien arrogance to respectful caution was exactly what the strategic planners had hoped to achieve. Humanity had demonstrated enough power to command respect while maintaining enough mystery to keep potential enemies uncertain about human capabilities. Fear of the unknown was often more effective than displays of overwhelming force. The president had already decided to accept most of the diplomatic overtures as an opportunity to establish humanity as a major galactic power without further military conflict. The victory at Kepler Station had accomplished in one battle what might have taken decades of conventional warfare to achieve. Human expansion could now proceed through negotiation and treaty rather than conquest and occupation. Colonel Walsh asked about maintaining the technology deception now that human ships had demonstrated capabilities far beyond what their intelligence profiles suggested. Several alien species were already questioning how primitive chemical rockets could defeat advanced plasma weapons. The cover story would need careful management to remain believable. Admiral Grant explained that they would allow controlled leaks, suggesting that human ships used salvaged alien technology or had made recent breakthrough discoveries. The important thing was to maintain uncertainty about the true extent of human capabilities. Let the aliens think they understood human technology while keeping them guessing about what other surprises humanity might have developed. The strategic deception had taken years to establish through carefully planted intelligence reports and staged demonstrations of primitive technology. Human ships had deliberately used inferior weapons and outdated tactics during early encounters to reinforce alien assumptions about human capabilities. The investment in misdirection was now paying dividends beyond their most optimistic projections. Though, Colonel raised concerns about what would happen when alien scientists eventually analyzed the battle recordings and figured out the truth about human technology. Admiral Grant turned to look out at the Luna construction yards where new human warships were taking shape. These vessels incorporated technologies that most alien species could not even comprehend, let alone duplicate. Ships powered by controlled black hole reactors and armed with weaponized dark matter represented just the beginning of human technological advancement. The aliens were studying conventional particle beams, while human scientists were developing weapons that could manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. By the time any alien species understood what they were really facing, it would be far too late to mount effective resistance. Admiral Grant concluded that the age of human expansion had truly begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for this moment, while hiding their true capabilities behind carefully maintained facades of primitive technology. The aliens had underestimated humanity for the last time, and would spend the coming decades learning to respect their new human neighbors whether they wanted to or not.